Paul Sparks. You played Paul Schneider in the Waco series on the Paramount Network. I want to go straight to this question. What made you want to be involved in this project? It's obviously a very infamous story. What drew you to it?
His actual name is Steve Schneider.
Right.
Not Steve. But, I grew up in Oklahoma. I remember this very vividly when it was going on. I grew up not too far, kind of down the street from where this all took place. And so it was definitely on my radar. And when I read the script, I was kind of blown away by the humanizing of like all these people that were involved. I think my impression of what was going on was, sort of sexual deviance, cult crazy people, guns, and of course, as you always learn when you really research things, you find out that it's not quite the whole story. And so that was part of it. And the script was just really good. It was a good part, the dynamic part. A lot of the things that he's trying to hold and trying to do were provide a lot of space for me to make a lot of choices about stuff. And good friend Mike Shannon was doing it, and I talked to the Dowdles brothers. I loved them. I thought their heart was in the right place about it. And probably the last thing was that because it was based on two different books, there was David Thibodeau's book, who was a survivor, and then there was Gary Nesner's book, who was the head of the FBI at that time. And I don't know that they necessarily agreed about how things went down or what it was, but it was nice that the Dowdle brothers wanted to use both sides of that story in order to illuminate what went on there. So that was all very intriguing and exciting for me.
And see, the beauty of this series is how balanced it actually is, because everything that you watch was always coming from a perspective, but this one really kind of toes the line really quite evenly, which is surprising because we all have preconceived ideas about what happened in Waco, especially because of what we were fed. And were you the same? You had preconceived ideas that kind of were broken down a bit when you read the script and then were playing the part?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's impossible. The PR machine, was so great, and it's so much more interesting to have this kind of salacious interpretation of what is going on. They were selling newspapers, and I think that unfortunately, all these lives, all these people, not only in the Davidians, but also at the FBI, the effort that was being put in order to resolve this impossible situation, it was shocking to me. It was shocking to me to learn about it. And I don't know anybody that I've talked to that was anywhere close to what went on, including Gary or David Thibodeau, or we even spoke to Dick DeGuerin, who was the lawyer for David Koresh. Everybody consensus, it was such a complicated situation.
Yeah, it really was. And it also occurs to me when I'm talking to actors who's playing real people, especially contemporary people, is there a special kind of challenge or pressure on you as an actor to kind of give this guy some truth, even though he hasn't been around for a while now, obviously, but he's still real and has a family and so forth? What goes through your mind when you're playing him?
Yeah, it's impossible to not feel a responsibility to those people, and I certainly felt that way about Steve. I had the good fortune to be in touch with his sister, Sue, and she spoke with me for a long time and talked to me about who Steve was and who Steve was to her, and what this whole thing was about, and shared, bits and pieces of his life. And that I carried with me, of course, throughout, not only as a sort of mercenary actor who's trying to acquire as much information as I can in order to create a person, but also it was impossible not to at times look around and say, wow, because the sets were so real, because, they really burned that place to the ground. It was hard not to be moved by the fact that of the information of like what had gone on, to think about the facts of the actual case. It was very affecting, I think, for all of us. And I think it sort of really bound us together. Certainly Taylor and I and Melissa and Julia and Andrea, everybody that was involved in, and Rory, in what was going on inside the Davidians household. It was we would have these moments of real, you'd sort of be washed over with this sort of profound event that had occurred. Yeah.
Yeah, and see, because after watching it, and I've seen documentaries about this, and we all kind of know about the incompetence of the ATF and how Koresh wasn't perfect either, thought he was the Messiah. It's a confluence of events, so many events that kind of came together that made this kind of a real shitstorm by the end. But I'm thinking, like, when you're in there and you're playing it every day, and you've kind of answered this, but I just want to explore when you're really all playing something so profoundly, dark and heavy. What's it like on set every day? Did you find this particular project particularly challenging?
I didn't. This is like a lot of things that we do. It all kind of trickles down and from the top. And a lot of the Dowdle brothers, John and Drew, they really had their heart in the right place about this. I think the story that they wanted to tell, and Mike, Shannon, and Taylor Kitsch also at the top, really, really making an effort to like really honestly sort of explore this. They knew what was going on, and I think that it sort of releases a kind of tension. We actually laughed a lot on set. We actually we became really close. We were kind of all trapped together in, or to say trapped, we were trapped in Santa Fe. I don't know if that's, I don't know if that qualifies as being trapped. But we were all in Santa Fe together. We spent a lot of time together. A lot of the scenes involved all of us. Even the extras really became much more than extras. They were really a part of the community that was there. They were always there every day. We knew each other. And so there was a really loving environment. But, I'm not going to lie. The day that we shot the end of that, my last scenes with Taylor were, it was emotional. It was emotional for us, I think. And I think it was emotional for everyone.
Yeah. And what for people watching this who haven't seen it yet, there's something that really occurred to me. It's not just really for me about the story. It's actually quite relevant to what's happening today, because it's there's bits about fake news. There's a line where someone says, "We are all of us Americans. When did we start seeing each other as the enemy?" It's so relevant to what's going on in the States right now. What do you think Waco tells us about what's going on in America, particularly with law enforcement and the media?
Well, yeah, I think it certainly speaks to the fact that when you don't talk to each other, when you have this sort of gulf between parties, entities on either side that are not communicating with each other, that the sort of paranoia of what the other is trying to do to you can spin out of control to a place that can be really tragic. I also think that the sort of over militarization of humanity, the fact that there were so many weapons involved, that made it really difficult for there to be a peaceful outcome in this. And I think we are a very heavily armed society. I think that we sometimes look at things like we want to control them by using weaponry, as opposed to trying to find diplomatic ways to do that. And I also think that there's a lot of people that get really nervous with whatever the others are doing, that I don't really understand what they're doing. And you'd like to think that as we become a more integrated and diverse society, that there would be less of that. But it appears, we see it all the time, that we're still very separated as people. We still see people as other, and hopefully, hopefully the lesson you can learn from this is that those people need to just talk. I think it's Mike's character who says, Gary Nesner says toward the end, as they're sort of getting ready to assault, he says, you know what the sheriff did for all these years in order to get these people to do the things they wanted to do? He didn't carry a gun, he talked to them. And I think that is where we need to focus. And I think that this is a morality story about that.
Yeah, it really is, and it really took me by surprise, and it's really quite effective. But so given that we're an awards website, I want to get a little bit more superficial now, if I may.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So you're no stranger to awards. You've won 2 ensemble prizes from the SAG for your work on Boardwalk, and you were recently nominated at the Emmys for your guest role on House of Cards, a role that most of us would be most familiar with in terms of your work. And I just want to go back to, firstly, the ensemble win, the both of them, and secondly, that Emmy nomination. Just take us back to when you found out about that.
With Boardwalk Empire, that was such the beginning of my career outside of just the theater scene. I'd been in the theater and sort of indie films for a long time, and that was really my first job, that was like a big job. And we all felt so lucky to be just a part of that whole experience. And that was a dream that just kind of kept on giving gifts. That character, I still, to this day, I love that guy. I miss Mickey Doyle. I miss this sort of broad, beautiful thing that they let me do on that show. And then to be awarded, and for that group of people, we're still all friends. Like, I know all those guys. That doesn't happen all the time on shows, that you remain friends, but I am still friends with all of those guys. We really formed up a bond there. I think it was a beginning for a lot of us. And so that was really special. And then to be totally honest, the Emmy thing was so surprising. It just never occurred to me that would ever happen. I think it's hard to imagine. It's not lost on me that it's hard to get a pat on the back in life.
Yeah.
And getting nominated for an Emmy is sort of the thermonuclear version of the pat on the back. I was so, it seemed absurd to me, and yet it was so delightful. And it's so delightful to go and be around all those super talented people that I'm watching just like everybody else on TV and rooting for. And those have been really special sort of experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll be, I think, on the ballot again, obviously, for Waco in the limited series category. So we'll see how we go there. But you mentioned that you're a theatre actor, an indie actor for a very long time, and you're right, because when I started getting into your work, you've been in a lot of things lately. I find that your career has just completely gone off the radar, which is amazing and wonderful. But I was like, where did Paul come from? And when I looked at your credits, I realized that you've really seemed to hit the ground running kind of later on in your life. And talk us through that dynamic, because that's quite unusual, isn't it?
Well, I think it happens differently for everybody. There are some people that they walk out of school and they immediately, are off to the races, and they have this kind of 20s sunrise of success. And for me, it was different. I got out of school. All I really knew was the theater. I did a lot of that kind of downtown New York City off Broadway theater, where we were sort of creating it ourselves or with friends for little or no money. And it was a struggle for a long time, but I love the theater. I have always, I adore it. I still try and do at least one show a year, even now, but there were times in the beginning, in that first 10 or 15 years, that I was sort of toiling in obscurity in New York, that I thought, oh, I guess this is never going to happen for me. This is what happens for me, is that I'll just do theater, and that will be my life. And so I feel so fortunate that my life has become has expanded to enjoy so much success in television and film. And, I also think that some of it is, you just never know when it's going to happen. You hope you're ready, that you're able to do the things that come along for you. I don't feel like I'm doing anything differently now than I was doing back then. Maybe I was just more ready for it to happen. I'm not totally sure.
Who knows? But it happens for everybody. It doesn't matter if you're an actor or whatever your career is. Like when you hit the ground running and you hit success, it's an amazing thing. And mate, I know you've got Sweet Bitter coming up, and good luck for that. And we really appreciated your work and Girlfriend Experience. Thomas Yates in House of Cards, such a great character, and of course your work in Waco. Congratulations on that, and good luck this awards season.
All right, thank you so much. So long.